Long before the ruins became known online as one of Fukuoka's most terrifying abandoned locations, the Okamura Mental Hospital stood as a symbol of isolation hidden deep within the forests of southern Japan. The surrounding hills were quiet, covered in thick cedar and bamboo groves that swallowed sound during the evening. Even now, older locals sometimes avoid mentioning the place directly, referring to it only as that hospital in the mountains. The origins of the hospital trace back to Japan's difficult recovery period after World War II. During the late 1940s and early 1950s, Japan faced enormous social pressure. Thousands of families struggled with poverty, trauma, and psychological illness left behind by war. Mental health treatment at the time remained deeply misunderstood. In rural areas especially, families often hid relatives suffering from depression, trauma, schizophrenia, or emotional instability due to social shame. It was during this era that the Okamura Mental Hospital was reportedly established on isolated land outside the populated parts of Fukuoka Prefecture. According to local stories, the land itself already carried a strange reputation before the hospital was built. Elder villagers claimed the forest had once contained small abandoned shrines and burial grounds dating back generations. Hunters allegedly avoided the hills because strange echoes carried unnaturally through the trees after dark. Still, construction moved forward. The hospital complex was designed with harsh practicality rather than comfort. Witness descriptions from former visitors spoke about thick concrete walls, narrow patient windows, and long hallways illuminated by weak fluorescent lights that buzzed endlessly at night. The buildings were intentionally separated from the outside world. Tall fencing surrounded much of the property, and the only access road wound through dense forest for nearly 20 minutes before reaching the entrance gates. Former workers supposedly described the atmosphere as oppressive even during daytime. Patients were divided into different wards depending on their conditions. The most severe cases were allegedly housed in isolated sections near the lower floors and basement levels. Stories from retired nurses claimed some patients spent years inside the facility without receiving visitors from family members. At first, the hospital maintained a relatively ordinary reputation. Local supply trucks regularly delivered food and medicine. Staff members traveled from nearby towns for work. But by the late 1950s, unsettling rumors slowly began appearing throughout nearby villages. One story involved a patient who disappeared during winter. According to local accounts, nurses discovered an empty bed during a night shift, though the doors to the ward remained locked from the outside. Staff searched the property for hours but found nothing except barefoot footprints leading toward the forest before abruptly ending in the snow. The patient was never officially located. After that incident, workers reportedly became increasingly nervous during overnight shifts. Some employees claimed they heard whispers echoing through empty hallways late at night. Others described seeing patients speaking quietly to invisible figures standing near windows. Then came the rumors surrounding Dr. Okamura himself. Descriptions varied wildly depending on who told the story. Some portrayed him as a strict but brilliant psychiatrist dedicated to difficult cases. Others described him as emotionally cold, obsessed with experimental treatment methods and absolute patient control. Several former staff members allegedly claimed he believed fear could shock unstable minds back into order. By the 1960s, darker stories emerged. Locals began whispering about screams heard from the lower levels of the hospital after midnight. Delivery workers claimed they occasionally saw restrained patients staring silently from upper windows. Farmers working nearby fields described hearing metallic banging sounds echoing through the mountains during storms. The hospital basement became the center of the most disturbing rumors. According to stories shared decades later, the underground level supposedly contained isolation rooms where violent or unstable patients were confined for extended periods. Some accounts described narrow concrete chambers with almost no light. Others claimed experimental procedures occurred there away from public view. No official evidence confirming these stories ever surfaced publicly, but the rumors spread rapidly across surrounding communities. One former cleaner supposedly told villagers that certain sections of the basement were permanently locked, even from most hospital employees. He claimed strange odors sometimes drifted upward through ventilation shafts late at night. Then tragedy reportedly struck during the late 1960s. A powerful landslide caused by seasonal rain partially damaged roads surrounding the property. During the chaos, several patients allegedly escaped into nearby forests. Search teams spent days combing the mountains. Some patients were recovered wandering roads in confused states. Others were never found. Afterward, fear surrounding the hospital intensified dramatically. Parents warned children never to approach the forest paths near the facility. Taxi drivers avoided the access road after dark. Some nearby residents even claimed shadowy figures occasionally appeared near their homes during rainy nights, staring silently before disappearing back into the woods. But the most infamous event connected to Okamura Mental Hospital supposedly occurred during the early 1970s. A violent typhoon swept across Fukuoka Prefecture, knocking out electricity across large areas of the region. According to local legend, the hospital lost power completely during the storm. What happened next became the foundation for nearly every haunting story connected to the ruins. Former employees allegedly claimed emergency generators failed repeatedly while floodwater entered lower sections of the building. Patients trapped in darkness reportedly panicked as staff struggled to maintain order. Residents living miles away later claimed they heard screaming carried through the mountains by the storm winds. One rumor suggested multiple patients died that night due to equipment failures. Another claimed staff members abandoned certain wards while trying to control flooding in the basement. A darker version alleged violent confrontations broke out among terrified patients trapped in darkness for hours. No official public explanation was ever widely circulated. But after the typhoon incident, something about the hospital reportedly changed permanently. Workers began resigning suddenly. Maintenance deteriorated. Patient numbers decreased. Those who continued working there allegedly experienced increasingly disturbing events. Nurses reported hearing footsteps in empty wards. Security guards described doors opening on their own. Several employees claimed they saw pale figures standing at the ends of hallways before vanishing when approached. One chilling story involved a night guard assigned to patrol the basement. According to legend, he radioed co-workers claiming he heard patients crying from inside locked storage rooms. Moments later, the transmission dissolved into static. The guard was later found unconscious near a stairwell entrance. He reportedly resigned immediately afterward and refused to speak publicly about what happened. By the 1980s, the hospital had become financially unstable. Medical standards across Japan were changing, and older institutions faced growing scrutiny. Rumors surrounding Okamura Mental Hospital only worsened its reputation. Fewer families were willing to send relatives there. Eventually, the facility shut down. But even the closure became surrounded by mystery. Some locals claimed staff left in an organized evacuation. Others insisted the hospital was abandoned almost overnight. One persistent rumor claimed medical records and personal belongings remained scattered throughout patient rooms exactly as they were left. After closure, nature quickly reclaimed the property. Rainwater flooded corridors. Mold spread across ceilings. Vines crawled through broken windows. Trees erupted through cracked concrete. Inside, the atmosphere reportedly remained deeply unsettling. Urban explorers who entered during the 1990s described wheelchairs left overturned in hallways, rusted restraint beds still chained to floors, and faded patient notes scattered across ruined offices. The most feared location inside the ruins was supposedly Ward C. Visitors claimed the air there felt unnaturally cold even during summer. Flashlights allegedly malfunctioned frequently near one specific patient room. Some explorers reported hearing faint knocking sounds from inside walls despite the building being abandoned for decades. Then came the rise of internet horror culture in Japan during the early 2000s. Photographs and videos from the ruins began circulating online. Paranormal investigators visited the site hoping to capture evidence of supernatural activity. Many claimed terrifying experiences. One group allegedly recorded distant crying while exploring upper floors. Another claimed their camera briefly captured a shadowy human figure standing motionless in a flooded hallway. Some visitors reported sudden nausea, panic attacks, or overwhelming feelings of dread after entering basement areas. A particularly famous story tells of two college students who entered the ruins during winter. According to the legend, they explored the hospital for several hours without incident until reaching the old hydrotherapy ward. There, one student reportedly noticed water dripping steadily from the ceiling despite the room being dry. When he looked upward, he allegedly saw a pale face reflected in the cracked overhead glass staring directly at him. The pair fled immediately. Later, while reviewing audio recordings from the trip, they supposedly heard faint breathing and a distorted voice whispering, "Why did you leave us?" Whether real, exaggerated, or entirely fictional, stories like these transformed Okamura Mental Hospital into one of Fukuoka's most infamous haunted ruins. Even today, explorers continue searching for the remains hidden within overgrown forest roads. Much of the structure has reportedly collapsed from age and weather damage, making entry extremely dangerous. But the legend survives. Locals still speak about strange lights appearing among the trees during storms. Some hikers claim they hear metallic banging deep in the hills at night. Others insist they have seen figures standing silently near the ruined entrance road before disappearing into fog. And perhaps the most disturbing part of the story is this. Nobody truly knows how much of the legend is real. Official records remain scarce. Witness accounts contradict each other. Stories have blended with decades of fear, rumor, and internet mythology. But for many people in Fukuoka, the ruins of Okamura Mental Hospital are more than just an abandoned building. They are a reminder of forgotten patients, hidden suffering, and a dark period in history when people could disappear behind hospital walls and slowly be erased from the outside world. And deep in the forest, where broken windows still stare out from collapsing concrete halls, some believe those memories never truly left.